Okay, boys and girls, today I'm going to show you how to replace a car radiator. Now, in case you don't know, that's this big thing that keeps your engine from overheating. Now, we'll be doing this on my 1987 Toyota MR2 Mark I, but the procedure for replacing a car radiator is pretty much the same for almost any car ever made. So this video is useful if you want to replace your radiator on pretty much any car. So, without any more talking, let's get to it. Now, the first thing we have to do before replacing the radiator is, of course, to drain all the coolant from the radiator. Now, in my case, the coolant drain plug is located right here, right there, on the passenger side of the car, in case your steering wheel is on the left-hand side. Once you have located the coolant drain plug, simply undo it and patiently let all the coolant drain out. If you want to replace all the coolant in your vehicle, you also need to drain the coolant from your engine. And if you want to drain the coolant from your engine on a Toyota MR2 Mark I, the coolant drain plug location on the engine is really close to the exhaust manifold and the oil filter, and it's right next to the oil pressure sender. So right here. So undo that one as well and let all the coolant drain from the engine block if you want to replace all the coolant in your engine. If you're just doing the radiator, then there's no need to drain the coolant from your engine as well. So here's a little tip to help you get the last of the coolant out of the system and have a less of a mess to clean up later. So what you can do is grab the radiator hoses that get coolant into the radiator and squeeze them. This squeezing action will help all the coolant drain out of the radiator and the rest of the cooling system of your car. So after all of the coolant has been drained, it's time to pop the hood and gain access to remove the old radiator. Now, depending on the year of manufacture of your Toyota MR2 Mark I, you might need to remove this plastic piece of trim to get access to the radiator. It's usually held in just by a few plastic pop rivets. So once the plastic is out of the way, we need to remove the radiator. Now, usually to remove a radiator, you need to disconnect some hoses, some sensors, and separate the radiator from the radiator fans and the fan shroud. Now, the first thing we're going to do is exactly that, and we are going to remove the fan shrouds from the radiator. Now, in the case of the MR2 Mark I, the fan shrouds are held to the radiator by a total of 6 bolts. There are 2 on the top side, and there are 4 on the bottom side of the radiator. To get to the 4 on the bottom side, you will need access to the underside of the car, but you do not need to jack the car up unless your car has been extremely lowered. Now, once all of the bolts are out, you can move the fan shrouds away and put them down on the ground. You do not need to disconnect the fan connectors because there's plenty of wire there, so it can safely hang on the ground without stretching or possibly damaging the wires of the fan connectors. So once the fan shrouds have been removed, it's time to disconnect the radiator hoses. Now, the radiator hoses are usually going to be old and are going to be held on there pretty tight, so definitely be patient here and take your time so you do not damage anything. Sometimes warming up the hoses just a bit and wiggling them around for a while can help get them off. To remove the hoses, simply remove the hose clamps with some pliers and then pull the hoses away from the radiator. There is one hose at the top left-hand side of the radiator when you're looking at the car from the front of the car, and there's another hose at the bottom right-hand side of the radiator, again when looking at the car standing right in front of the car. After the hoses have been removed, we need to disconnect the coolant, the radiator coolant temperature sensor, which is located right at the middle of the radiator, at the right hand side of the radiator. When looking from the front of the car, disconnecting the sensor is super simple. Just press on the little clip and disconnect the sensor. Once the sensor has been disconnected, we are going to unbolt the radiator brackets. These radiator brackets are the only thing that is physically holding the radiator to the car, and once the brackets have been bolted, we can simply lift the radiator out of the vehicle. So here we have the old radiator side by side with the new radiator. Now before we install the new one, we're going to get the old radiator and remove the coolant temperature sensor from the old radiator and install it into the new one. Once that is done, it's time to install the new radiator. Now, installing the new radiator is pretty much the reverse process of when we removed it. So, connect the hoses, connect the sensor, attach the fan shrouds, and bolt down the radiator hold down brackets. And once that is done, all that's left to do is to pour new coolant in and bleed your coolant system. Now, depending on your particular car, bleeding the coolant might be pretty simple, or as it's in the case of the mid-engine Toyota MR2, bleeding the coolant system is just that bit more complicated. Now, here's a quick rundown of how to bleed the coolant on your Toyota MR2 Mark I. So the first thing we are going to do to bleed the coolant is that we are going to locate the 3 coolant bleed plugs. One is in the engine bay, on top of the transmission, right here. And the other 2 are in the front. One is on the radiator itself, and the other one is right here close to the firewall. Now we're going to attach 2 clear hoses to the 2 front coolant bleed plugs. We're going to leave the engine bay coolant bleed plug as is. Once we have attached the hoses, we're going to undo all of the bleed plugs a couple of turns, maybe 3 to 4 turns. And we are then going to start pouring coolant into the system. While we are pouring coolant, we are going to be watching the hose that's coming from the engine bay coolant bleed plug. Now, it helps to have a light source attached behind this old hose so you can see when coolant starts coming through this hose. When you see coolant in this hose, you are going to close the engine bay coolant bleed plug. And you are going to keep pouring coolant into the system until the level of coolant on the 2 front clear hoses is on the same level as it is, in the engine bay, basically at the same level of the engine bay coolant bleed plug. So once the coolant has been bled, the last thing you have to do is add some coolant to the coolant overflow tank to the full mark, turn the car on and drive it around. After you have driven it, check the level in the coolant overflow tank and add coolant as necessary again to the full mark. And that's pretty much it. That's how to replace a car radiator and some bonus instructions on how to bleed the coolant on a Toyota MR2 Mark I. So I hope you liked the video, I hope you found it useful. As always, don't forget to share, like, comment and subscribe. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll be seeing you soon on the D4A channel with more fun and useful stuff.